Hello and welcome back to a brand new episode of Minor Talk GIMS edition. I'm Jorjeena and I'll be the host for today. In today's episode, we have our special guest, Associate Prof. Dr. Anand Sanmugam, who will be helping us to unveil the process of MMI. But before we continue, Prof. Anand, could you briefly introduce yourself to us?
Hi Jorjeena, thank you so much for having me on this, can I call it a podcast?
Sure. Yeah, it can be called that.
I identify as a pediatric surgeon. I am a pediatric neonatal surgeon. I think that's the first thing that I need to put out there. I also am an associate professor in pediatric surgery. At the same time, I have a keen interest in medical education. That has always been the case. And as a result of that, I pursued my Masters of Medical Education after completing my specialty training and overseas fellowship program. And I think as a result of that has had a knock-on effect. I'm very heavily involved in educational activities, both for professional development amongst my colleagues in Faculty of Medicine, undergraduates and postgraduates.
Wow, that was a very interesting introduction you have. Okay, so let's dive right into the question. So, for our first question, what qualities make an interviewee stand out from the rest? And what are you specifically looking for in a candidate?
Now, different universities have a slightly different approach to how the selection process takes place. Generally, but they're not very different from one another. So when you have already been called for the interview, there has already been some form of a screening process that has taken place. Yeah. Right? Typically, for a medical undergraduate aspirant, a lot of importance is placed on academic strength, but we also want a balanced candidate. So when we call you for an interview, it's another way of us to getting to know our prospective candidates. So ultimately, what we look for is we look for candidates that are authentic, able to articulate their ideas and thoughts, and we use that as an opportunity to have an insight on how you can apply your past experiences, your critical thinking into your day-to-day life. Because these are the things that are difficult to be captured, from screening a CV or giving you an entrance examination.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, I feel like a lot of interviewees do not know actually what they are supposed to do in an interview and what they're supposed to show. So for our second question, in a scenario where a candidate is unfamiliar with the topic presented in an interview question, should the interviewee confidently make something up, or should they be honest and ask for assistance?
Okay, good question. Because more often than not, you do find these scenarios playing out. Presenting themselves. The first thing that I would recommend is to minimize the probability of it happening in the first place. And the way to achieve this is by preparing well. So there are various resources online that give you some idea of how a multiple mini interview or an MMI process takes place. What are the typical stations that are usually structured for this whole process, as well as tips and tricks that you can learn from undergrad from medical student forums. So these are all valuable resources. There are also books available out there. I'll be covering them in my talk later tomorrow. But another thing that many students or aspiring students fail to make use of is seniors. Those who have actually gotten into the program, who probably is still fresh in their memory. A year or two ago, they would have gone through the MMI. That is such an opportunity for aspiring students or interviewees to actually tap into.
Yeah, that's actually true, and it's very good advice for that. Yeah, okay, so for our third question, some interview questions can be quite controversial. such as those topics on abortion or euthanasia. How should an interviewee approach this sensitive issue with both maturity and justice?
Yeah. First of all, I think before I answer this question, I did not answer your previous question completely. First, do not make things up. I think you don't make things up on the go. Be honest and be authentic. Tell them that you have not okay, for instance, sometimes some questions can be worded in such a manner. You have been in situation A, how did you react to situation A? While in reality, that may not have happened. So there are always two approaches that you can take when answering a question like this, when you have not personally been involved. Scenario 1, you can actually quote a response to a scenario that may have happened with a close family member or a friend where you saw everything play out. You can use that to structure your answer, or you can put yourself in that hypothetical scenario and say that, look, I've not actually had this personal experience, but if I were to face this situation today or in the near future, this is how I would approach the situation, and to a certain degree anticipate what the likely outcomes are and provide a bit of commentary on that. So that's for the previous question. I'm sorry I did not address that. Now for this question, sensitive topics. Now, one important thing that I think prospective interviews need to know is that there is no right or wrong answer. We as interviewers don't have an answer key or an answer scheme where you need to tick all the boxes for it to be a good answer.
Okay.
Alright? We are more interested in looking at your thought process and the way you articulate your thoughts and opinions rather than what those thoughts or opinions are. So circling back to the specifics of the question, if first of all, the non-verbal communication has to be appropriate. If the discussion centers around sensitive and heavy subjects like euthanasia, death penalty, abortion, ensure that your non-verbal communication and your expressions are appropriate. These are heavy matters. Display the seriousness and the earnestness. You don't want to be giving a huge smile and laughing in between when you're delivering the answer, because the weight of the subject is such. Alright? So that is one. Number 2, have the open-mindedness to look at both sides of an argument. Now you can have your opinion on a certain matter and you're free to have that opinion. Different people have different cultural backgrounds, different people have a different worldview. That is absolutely fine. But a good, well-balanced answer that looks at both sides of the argument will demonstrate to the interviewer that you are open and you understand other people's viewpoints as well. So, to summarize this specific, my answer to this specific question is that you don't have to take a stand. You don't have to worry about the guesswork of what do you think the interviewer wants you to say. Be honest, be authentic. You can tell them what your opinion is, but also discuss both sides of the argument. Okay, so that will be a good opportunity for them for the interviewer to see your thought process, your thought processes as well as your critical thinking.
Okay. I really like your point of being authentic and like seeing both sides instead of just siding one. Okay, so next question we have: what would you say is the most challenging aspect of life as a medical student and later as a medical officer? How do you handle the mental stress while staying passionate about this field?
Okay, so I'll divide this to 2 parts. Okay, the challenges were slightly different when I was a medical student to what you are faced with, or your peers are faced with today. I think, and from what I observe, first of all, access I think you guys have a lot more distractions.
Yeah, that is true.
Okay, so social media, everything's at your fingertips. Everything is easily accessible. That also that can be a strength in terms of access to information, resources. But that also sometimes can play into other issues that can affect performance, through addiction to social media, gaming, and things like that. So on the outset, this is one challenge that I anticipate medical students currently face. Generally speaking, okay, I think medical students from the recent. Let me phrase this again. Medical students from my time, and I think medical students at present, I think have a common challenge, which is depending on what stream of schools you come from. Now, you have a primary and secondary education that I think to a certain degree still relies a bit heavily on rote learning, with not much opportunity for personal expression, articulation of ideas, and critical thinking. I think that those aspects are still under development in our education system. I think strides have been made, but when you move on to tertiary education, what happens is a lot of the education process or the learning process should be self-driven.
Yeah.
Right? So the concern is always that there is a transition that exists, because if you have been going through an education system that has prepared you for this, you would have the required coping mechanisms, as well as tools to utilize the resources to drive your own learning. Unfortunately, if you have been in a system that is basically pedagogical, that means the teacher sits in front and teaches you everything, gives you all the facts, you look at a bunch of books, you memorize the facts, you write them out, you write your responses in an exam, and you're rewarded by that system. Suddenly to go into a system where it's self-driven learning, and you push everything by yourself, and your teacher that used to be the source of all your information now serves the role of a facilitator and a guide, that transition can be tricky. So I think to a certain degree now, that is one of the major challenges, that whole transition issue. But I am pleased to note that though this may be the issue, I think over time students overcome this, and most of you guys are fine by the time you reach your third, fourth, fifth year.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you deal with stress, mental stress in this field?
Okay, so this is a topic that has been and continues to be of great concern for everyone. Mental health. In the past, this was still an issue, but it has not gotten the awareness and the publicity it deserves in the past. So as a result of that, I've witnessed colleagues that required assistance but didn't quite get the assistance that they required, simply because it wasn't a mainstream issue that was commonly discussed. And as a result of that, they had to take a different path. Their full potential was not achieved. Those challenges were there. These challenges are still present, and I think it's getting a lot of airtime simply because people are more aware of it, and this is a welcome development, the awareness surrounding it. So to answer your question specifically, and I'm going to tailor this specifically to medical students, know where to go to get support. So support can come from various sources. There is, of course, whenever you struggle, go back to your family. Don't physically go back, keep in touch. If that system is not if that support system is not well developed, because different people come from different backgrounds, peer support is important. Speak about your problems. Of course, to the degree of comfort that suits you. There are a lot of avenues for you to seek professional help within your medical universities. It is a medical university after all. So you have access to psychiatrists, counselors, psychologists, right? So this is actually all accessible. Now, most of the time when you join a medical school, there are resources that will be informed to medical students in terms of where to go to seek for help. Now, sources of stress may not only be mental stress. Sometimes there are financial issues also that can be contributory. To my knowledge, most public universities have a very good system to assist students who are struggling financially. I know for a fact that the undergraduate arm of the deanery and the student affairs arm of the deanery, led by Prof. Yazid and Prof. Sharizal respectively, have enough mechanisms in place to ensure that students don't need to go hungry, students don't need to go without having the ability to buy the necessary learning materials that they need. So I think this, as part of the onboarding orientation processes, these contexts are available. These resources are available, so be aware of them. And if you see that your colleague is actually struggling, alright, remind them and get them to seek that help. I think that is very important. Never hesitate to meet your supervisors or to meet your deputy deans or even the dean to get the support that you need. So these are the support systems to address stress and mental illnesses. Now, on your day-to-day, be balanced, right? I always find that work in groups and don't isolate. I'm a firm believer of group study, group activities, because that is what adult learning is all about. Okay, I told you I'm a medical educationist, so I'm not going to bore you with all the theory, but the reality is a lot of us learn. So when you are in a group environment, you not only do you learn that, or you get assistance in learning things that are a bit difficult for you to grasp concept-wise, you also learn your colleagues' methods of approaching difficult topics, and this can be pretty useful, right? And once that trust has already developed through the shared activities, they themselves or your group mates themselves can be effective, form effective support groups for you. Have a hobby, have a pastime, get out, get some fresh air, exercise. Okay, medical school is 5 years, pretty stressful, a lot to cover, but life goes on. And when you approach everything in moderation, you don't isolate yourself, you participate in group activities, you have a hobby, get enough exercise in, these things help in terms of mitigating the stresses that come with pursuing a medical program.
Thank you for that, Prof. So our next question is, could you share an experience that made you feel that despite the challenges, being a doctor is truly rewarding?
Despite its challenges, being a doctor is truly rewarding. Share my experiences. That is basically my lived experience every single day. I work with children. I work with children who come in ill, and sometimes they can be severely ill, and nothing beats the feeling of seeing the child that's been treated by you, your team and yourself, turn the corner, improve, and go home laughing and smiling. Right? So I don't need I've been doing this for years now. I don't need any convincing, and I've never gotten used or desensitized to that. It's still very rewarding. No matter how tired, no matter how many things that you have to juggle, this is still the driving force. Yes.
That's something I look forward to also. So, as a final advice to our pre-medical student, what are a few things you wish you had known before entering med school?
I guess my personal anecdotes are that there was never an aha moment where I was suddenly shocked by something that I didn't expect. But looking back, there are a lot of lessons that I've learned gradually over time. Okay, when you start year 1 and year 2 of med school, especially after you have come through, your basic foundational sciences, and then revisiting them again. When you have had that expectation that I'm going to engage patients and I'm going to, hit the ground running and be put in a clinical scenario and play doctor, there is a bit of adjustment of expectations there. It will come. The time will come. But be careful that it is very early on. You need to understand that whatever that you learn early in your medical school is going to be applicable, and it's going to be totally applicable and has its use cases when you go into the clinical side of things. So you have to trust the process. One. The advantage of the current system is that it's an integrated system. Now, my seniors in the past used to learn blocks of anatomy, physiology, pathology, and pharmacology with little integration to its application in clinical case. So I don't envy them, and really, you need to give them credit where it's due for them to survive that and then go to clinical. When I started medical school, the integrated system already started, where they actually blended core foundational sciences, and they showed you why you need to learn this in cases, why you needed to learn this and its purpose when it came to application in clinical medicine. So view it from that lens, that every single thing that you learn, no matter how mundane or dry or boring it may be, has its use cases. And when you try to make that link between your basic sciences and clinical medicine, it really, your engagement improves. B, when you look at it from that context, your foundation becomes stronger as well. That is one. Two, again, I mentioned this earlier, have a good bunch of friends. Form groups, study together, learn together, use each other as a support system, because that will really help you carry yourselves collectively through medical school. Have fun. Learn how to have fun. You are in this for the long haul. Right? You're joining this in your early 20s, and if you pursue it and you continue to pursue this as a career, this is going to be it for the next 40 years. You need to find joy and fun in what you do. That is very, very important. Alright? And I think with all these elements put together, I don't see why this can't be a rewarding and a fulfilling experience, right? And again, going back to one of the earlier questions, know where and when to seek help. And if you find a colleague that is struggling, intervene early.
Okay. So that ended on a very beautiful note. So thank you, Prof. Anand, for your time. And with that, we will end our minor talk episode, GIMS edition. So see you guys on the next episode.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.